Welcome to week 4 in finance. So we're moving along. And last week we looked at the concept of risk. And when you invest money in something, you're taking a risk regarding its return in the future. So, did you put it in the right place to invest? Or is it going to come back at a lower value than when you invested it? Did it earn 2%? Or did it earn 9%, or maybe it lost? Maybe it lost value. Maybe it came back at -5% or something like that. So you look at various levels of risk with your investment. How can you best invest that money so you get the best return on it, and there is risk involved there. So in the same way, we looked at risk when you borrow money as well. So the interest rate at which you borrow money represents the level of risk that the bank is taking by parting with that money for a little while. So could the bank have made more money, made a better return on that money by putting it somewhere else rather than by loaning it to you? So that's what that interest rate represents when you borrow money for a loan. So financial exercise number 1, I finished grading those, and I put some feedback on that assignment in the comment box and sometimes on your paper, just like I showed you in that video of the screencast of how I give feedback on assignments. So hopefully you've looked at those. This week I'm looking at your reaction assignment, where you looked at the balance between the balance give and take between return and probability. So you had to calculate and make some decisions about some of the different probabilities of various return rates when trying to decide where you're going to invest. So I'll be looking at that this week. And speaking of this week, we are looking at the time value of money. So for the last couple of years, we've been looking at inflation very closely. And when the economy is strong, inflation is a worry. So we've been monitoring that. And inflation means that your dollar isn't worth in the future what it's worth today. It's not worth today what it used to be worth in the past. So you get less for your money. The prices of things go up because your dollar isn't worth as much. The value of your dollar goes down. So it's an economic force that happens over time. So $10 today doesn't get you nearly as much as it did 20 years ago. So we often value or measure inflation by as it happens over time. So that's one thing that we're talking about when we're talking about when we look at the value of money, the time value of money. So that's one of the things that we're going to look at this week. Your reaction assignment this week looks at the future value of money and the present value of money. And that's a sports-related concept because a lot of the financing that gets tied up in sports has to do with facilities, for example, stadiums. So stadium financing is a very large thing to consider when cities are thinking about acquiring a franchise. St. Louis just did it with an MLS team, and stadium financing was the big issue that they had to work out in acquiring that franchise. So stadium financing, as it applies to the value of money today, and then how that value is going to behave over the 30 years that stadium is financed, or however long it is, but in a lot of cases it's 30 years. So that's what we're talking about this week, is that kind of time value of money, how that money behaves and changes and reacts over time, and how to calculate that value, those values. So another thing about calculating, since I just used that word, as I explained at the beginning of this class, the first half of this class is a little bit more math and calculation based, as we learn how to read and interpret some of the various financial concepts and economic forces that we see in the business world. So sports are certainly related to a lot of these concepts, and there are a lot of business aspects in sports. So the first half we're doing a lot of math. Hang with it. You're doing well. I appreciated your work in financial exercise number 1. I appreciated your attention to kind of getting it right. And so I'll be looking at the next reaction assignment where you had to do calculations again, and so hopefully you made it through that one as well. So in the second half of class, it's a little bit less calculation based and a little bit more bigger picture. So we're going to be getting away from some of the formulas and calculations and instead look at the bigger picture of finance as it relates to some of the different sectors of sport. So, for example, the difference between some private sector concepts in private sports, and some of the financial concepts in the public sector of sport. Sport is financed by a variety of methods, both public and private, and so we'll be kind of looking at those different methods in more detail in the second half of this class. So, in the present, I appreciate your attention to the math and the calculations and kind of getting that right. It's important to be able to interpret some of those business and financial concepts. So you have to make decisions based on the math that you do, and so that's kind of the point of that. So please, as you go through the financial exercises and the reaction assignments, ask me any questions that you might have. A lot of you have, and that's great. I love the chance to communicate with you. So I appreciate your communication and your desire for clarification. So have a great week. We've got to survive this weather. Fall's going to come, I hope. Hang in there. And again, I appreciate your notes. Keep on keeping on, and I'll talk to you soon.